Morning, everyone.
There's no audio.
I'd like to welcome you to the Continuing Care Administration's Home and Community-Based Services Performance-Based Incentive Payment Program, HCBS PIPP webinar, Ready, Aim, Change, and Now Measure. On behalf of the Aging and Adult Services Division, we're here, and my name is Sarah Thorson, and I'm with the...
We're without sound?
Without sound.
Okay.
It's very delayed. So now I'm hearing it. Now I'm hearing Sarah just start.
So what should I do?
You can start where you left off because they will be hearing it.
Okay.
But just know that there's some delay.
Okay.
All right. Okay. We had a little technical glitch here. I'm Sarah Thorson. I'm with the Disability Services Division, and I'd like to introduce our speaker today. But first, we're going to do a little housekeeping. During the webinar, if you have any questions about the presentation, if you need copies of the PowerPoint or the materials, if you need live caption link, you can email dhs.hcbspipp@state.mn.us. Okay. I'd like to introduce our speaker today, Jane Taylor. Jane is an international improvement advisor who works in healthcare, manufacturing, education, and government. She's an adult educator with more than 10 years experience in healthcare leadership and more than 20 years experience as a quality improvement advisor. Thank you, Jane, for joining us this morning.
You're welcome, Sarah. Thank you. And I'd like to start today by saying just a little bit of review. So if you remember, on our last webinar, we talked about the model for improvement, which has 3 questions. What are we trying to accomplish? How will we know a change is an improvement? And what changes can we make that will result in improvement? And we call that the aim, measure, and changes. And the model for improvement sits on top of the PDSA cycle, which is your engine of change, where you plan, you do, and study, and act. So before we go any further, I want to welcome Laurie Jasper. And Laurie is from Legacy Endeavors, and I'm going to ask her to say a little word about her agency, but Laurie was so generous to come this morning and actually has volunteered to interact in some of our materials so that we're grounding them in examples that will resonate with you. So Laurie, thank you so much for coming, and can you share a little bit about Legacy Endeavor?
Well, thank you for inviting me. Legacy Endeavors provides community residential service supports, formerly group homes, to people with developmental disabilities and mental health conditions. And we also do supported employment, in-home support, and independent living services. And we're in the Ramsey and Washington County areas.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you. Well, thanks again for coming in today to kind of enliven the model for improvement for us. So if we take each question one at a time, the first question is, what are we trying to accomplish? And you may remember that aim statements have 4 components: by when, what we're going to do, who benefits from what we do, and how much improvement do we want to achieve. So I asked Laurie if she would share her aim statement with us today that she wrote for her project.
By June of 2015, we want to foster connections between participants and community members. Legacy is working with the Eastside Y and with Dr. Motto. And one of our goals is that 90% or more service participants who participate in this project have at least one community connection with another community member or a community activity. The project involves both making a connection with an individual or with some sort of health enhancement, increase a self-reported enhancement with well-being among service participants of 30% or more over 6 months. Service participants will increase their rating of self-reported comfort in engaging with community members by 30% from our baseline, and staff will increase their self-reported comfort and knowledge in helping to facilitate these community relationships by 50%.
Great. So you can see that Laurie's met all the requirements. She's got by when? By June 2015. What she's going to do, foster these connections. And then we know who's going to benefit, which is the service participants that she serves. And then she's got 4 concrete goals. And she's probably, I bet, thought of a way that she's going to measure these. So Laurie, thanks a lot for sharing that with us. So that's aim statements. And the next part of the model for improvement has to do with measures. So how will we know that a change is an improvement? Because sometimes we make changes and it is not an improvement. So we're going to spend a lot of time today talking about measurement. And there are 3 kinds of measures. The first type of measure is an outcome measure. And an outcome measure is measured throughout the life of your project, that is every month or every week. And the outcome measure reflects what it is you want to accomplish. And in a minute, Laurie's going to share her outcome measures with us and her process measures. Process measures reflect how the work is done. So how is it that we're going to accomplish our aim? And how can we measure that? Because that's going to be much more sensitive than the outcome measure to change. And then, and sometimes you start with a process measure, and it serves you for a while, and you learn what you need to learn, and then you don't need to measure it anymore. So sometimes the process measures won't live through the whole project. And then balancing measures tell us, are there any unintended consequences or unintended benefits that result from making changes in your system? So let's see what kind of outcome measures Laurie came up with to see if she's accomplishing her aim.
We wanted the service participants to have a self-reported comfort in increasing engagement with community members. We thought this was important because we're looking at this as part of our person-centered approach to having individuals spend more time with people who are not paid to be with them.
Yeah.
We looked at the percentage of service participants in the project with self-reported enhanced well-being. Again, this is part of our overall philosophy of our agency, that people live a healthy lifestyle. And also look at the percent of service participants in a project with 1 or more weekly engagements.
That's great, because if a service participant has more than 1 engagement a week, then you're really accomplishing what you want to do, which is connecting them more with the community, right?
Yes, we want them to be connected either with an individual in the community or with a community organization. And we're hoping that connections with community organizations will lead to connections with members of the community.
Great. And then I see that you're going to ask, the service participants are going to report enhanced well-being. And so that sounds to me like you're going to have to ask them about it. Is that right?
Yes, we are doing a number of surveys.
Okay, so I'm glad to hear that, because I want to take a moment a little bit later to talk about surveys and how to do them in ways that are easy to do. So in order to accomplish this work, there's a lot of things your agency is going to have to do and your staff. So let's look at some of the process measures which really reflect how the work gets done. So what do you have there?
The process measures are the percentage of service participants who connect to a self-identified desired interest in the community or with a person that either they already know or making a new relationship with someone else. If they're not able to come up with a self-desired interest, we propose things that we think that they are interested in. Or again, we glean feedback from family members and things like that to help us come up with a desired interest. We are also looking at the percentage of service participants where staff facilitate the connection and a connection is made. And again, that's based on either the assumption that the person has an interest, or if they're participating in a community event and we start seeing a relationship happening naturally, that the staff will help facilitate that. That's been interesting because we have to work with the staff to understand that we want the relationship to develop organically, but facilitate it along and not to be in a rush to make that relationship happen. The percent of service participants making connections at the Eastside Y, they are our partner organization in the grant. And then the number of service participants that are in the dance class each week.
Great. So it sounds like the dance class is one of your connection opportunities at the Y.
Yes, it is.
And in this case, we're just going to look at the number of people who go rather than the percent, because it just might not be a very high percentage, and it might be kind of slow to change. So that'll be a nice indicator of how things are going. I really like that you're looking at self-identified interest, but also where the staff are facilitating it, because I know that sometimes it's difficult, and I really like that you've got this nice mix of process measures. Now, I'm wondering how we will know, Laurie, if there's unintended consequences or benefits as you do this work. So what did you come up for with balancing measures?
Our balancing measures are to look at the number of participants who connected, but later do not return to a subsequent connection or to the activity. And we have had this happen. We had a couple people that originally participated at the Y, and their motivation was to meet women to date. And when that didn't happen, the first 2 times, they decided to try other community endeavors, which they have participated in. And then there was also, we were looking at the measure of staff self-reporting comfort and knowledge in facilitating that community connection. And this also has been produced some interesting results for us. Our original baseline, the staff comfort level was quite high. And we thought, wow, how are we going to improve upon that? And then when we had our initial training session with Dr. Amato, we noticed that there was a slight dip in the staff's comfort level. And then we were concerned. We thought, well, the training is actually supposed to improve the staff comfort level. And through discussion, it came about that the staff now had a clear understanding of what the expectation was in terms of facilitating that connection, and it wasn't just taking someone to an event, but it was really trying to enhance that experience and the relationship. And so we're anticipating that the next measure, it will go back up.
And it might creep up over time as they gain experience making those connections and build their confidence and kind of learn how it works.
And as they share their success stories at our follow-up meetings as well.
Great. So I love that inclusion of qualitative data and the storytelling, because I find storytelling is really inspiring in improvement work, especially for staff. So kudos for that. So I know that you mentioned that you're going to have to be asking your participants and also your staff some questions. So I just wanted to take an opportunity to talk for a moment about sampling. So in improvement work, we really come down on the side of judgment sampling or convenience sampling. In a lot of statistics that you might know about or heard about, there's such a thing as random sampling, which is fine for certain kinds of projects. But in improvement, we're really just trying to get good enough data. And so we like to say, use your judgment to help you sample. So if you know that you have a certain population of your service participants that have a certain challenge, you might be very interested in that aspect and go in and just sample them. Is it scientific? Is it random? No. It's based on your judgment about what you want to learn. Or a convenient sample might be something like, okay, we're going to sample every 5 staff or every 5 participants. And you just start with 1 and then count off to the next 5. That's convenient sampling. That's not random. To do a true random sample, you have to have a random number generator. And that gets kind of complicated. So in our work, we're going to come down on the side of being pragmatic, which means something that is convenient and easy to do, or using our judgment to help inform who we want to survey. So when I think about sampling for staff satisfaction or sampling for participant experience, I think about avoiding oversampling. So I want to rotate among my participants so that I'm not sampling every service participant or every staff member every month. So what I might do to avoid sampling is say, I've got 25 staff. So I'm going to sample 2 of them every month, and I'm going to rotate it so that over a year, everybody gets sampled. Or I might say I'm going to sample every quarter. And so if I have 25 people, I divide by 4. That means I can sample about 6 a month. And so I'm going to sample 6, but I'll make a list of them. Who got sampled this quarter, and the next quarter I'll do the next 6. so I can avoid sampling, but I can still get a sense of how things are going. And for staff satisfaction, it's really important not to oversample. I wouldn't do it more than once a quarter. Now, for your service participants, you might want to sample them at the end. Sample them. You might want to do a sample of, ask them how their experience was at the end of every connection, because really you're trying to accelerate what you learn more than you're trying to accelerate learning about what makes a good connection. So I might actually ask them after every connection how their experience was. But for staff, I think I would avoid oversampling, and you just have to use your sense of how much is too much to sample your participants.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have any thoughts about that?
We have been doing the survey quarterly, and then just sort of anecdotally looking at who's returning to the dance class, or when we're doing our follow-up sessions, listening to the feedback that we're getting. But I like the idea of sort of doing it more of a convenience or judgment, because I think we have some people that are naturally more prone to making connections, and then we could really look at our judgment sampling to look at people that maybe have a little bit more difficult time making those connections and really hone in on those people.
That's a great idea. And then if you have data from both, you could have them both on the same run chart, and you could see the number of connections per week of the ones that more easily make connections and the ones per week that are a little bit more shy. So that's a great idea, to really use your judgment to go in and learn about the ones that have a little tougher time, your participants. Great. So the main thing is to get data that is more than like once a year data. Because sampling once a year, it's like too late by the time you find out how things are going. But if you can get a little bit of feedback every month, you can put that data on a run chart and see how you're trending over time, see if you're improving. So you mentioned the use of stories, and that brings me to think about qualitative data. So qualitative data is a way that we can understand deeply what the experience, feelings, or values of a group is. And this could be service participants, or it could be staff. And you can do it by interviewing. You can do it by doing observation. That's a kind of ethnography. Or you can actually have focus groups. And in focus groups, you would have a subset of 5 to 7 participants, and you try and make them as similar as possible. Because if you get too diverse a group in a focus group, it's very hard to make meaning from what they say, because their experiences are so diverse. So I like to make my focus groups as homogeneous as possible. And then what that does is I'll ask just maybe 5 questions. But the value of the focus group is in the interactions of the participants. So I hear them talk about what their experience was like, and they build on each other, and I learn a lot more quickly than I would if I have to go interview 5 separate people. So you can run different focus groups based on what you really want to learn. And just remember to make your subgroups in homogeneous sets of participants. So I hope all of you will think about how you could use focus groups in your work, even with your staff. So I want to talk about, really today's discussion is about data and measurement, grounded in the model for improvement. So how do we know if a change is improvement? Well, we have to look at numeric data. And the way we do that in improvement science is we look at data in sequence or data over time. So we might look at how many participants per week are making connections, or we might look at a percentage of participants with 1 or more engagement a week. Just depends on how we want to do it. But the main thing we're trying to do is make performance visible. So we want to be able to determine, are we really improving or not? And we want to have confidence that the changes that we're making are really resulting in improvement. And then later we're going to use data to see, are we holding our gains? And so anytime, what I love about data, especially data over time, is anytime I put up a chart, people start coming up with questions. Well, how come this? How come that? And these ideas will generate more tests of change. So here's an example of a run chart, and this could actually be Lauries fantasy data. So these are the percentage of participants with one or more engagement per week, and this is a run chart. And so it looks like, Laurie, you've gone from, in the first week, you had 36% of your participants had more than one engagement a week. And by the end of your project, which is going to be June, it looks like, if we fast forward and we imagine it's June, that you reached all the way up to 76%. That's a pretty good improvement, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
So we look at this and we can see there's some notes, annotations on the chart that tell me some of the things that you did. So it looks like in the fourth week, what did y'all do?
Part of our, we had a natural plan, do, study, act cycle built in before we even met you. And, but we made some changes right after our initial training with Dr. Amato. And we changed the class a little bit. And then we also did some additional staff training to try to engage individuals more.
So it looks like, too, you started asking participants how they wanted to connect and who they wanted to connect with. And then it looks like in the 6th week, you were able to connect some of your participants with dance classes at the Y. And then by the 10th week, it looks like you had already started facilitating other connections at the Y.
Not only at the Y, but at other places.
Okay, so we'd need to make another annotation on this chart that part of what got your great results was not only facilitating other activities at the Y, but we'd probably come in here if it was in the 11th week or wherever it was that you did it and make an annotation. So what I like about this chart is I can look at it and I can see the 1, 2, 3 things, 3 of the things Laurie did, and I can see what an effect that had on the percentage of participants who had more than one or more engagements. So that is one of her measures, and anybody looking at this chart, I think, and I look around the room here, and I look out into the virtual land, and I hope that you can see without doing any calculations that this is definitely an improvement. So there are some rules that I'm going to share with you that will increase your confidence in interpreting whether the changes that you're making really are bringing about improvement. So the first is that you'll see a shift of 6 points steadily above the median or below the median. Let's take a look. So if I look at this chart, this is the percentage of service participants in projects with self-reported enhanced well-being. So this is based on Laurie's asking them questions. And you can see in the first 3 weeks, Laurie had about 2 people who were 2% who were expressing enhanced well-being. And really, these first few data points are her baseline because she didn't really start making changes until this 5th week. So we could say around 2% were expressing enhanced well-being. And by the end of her project, she was up to 12%. So that's a big improvement from her baseline. Now, Laurie didn't go out and collect a big hairy baseline or get the perfect baseline. She just said, my first few data points are going to be my baseline. And then she started introducing these changes. She had the Y dance and exercise class, and then a walking club that the Y sponsored. And you can see that these 2 activities resulted in enhanced improvement. How do we know that? Because we see 6 data points above the median here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And there were 6 below. So this is called the shift. And when you see a pattern like this, it gives you a high degree of belief based on rules of probability. There's a 95% chance it's due to Laurie's changes. So that's called a shift, 6 points above or below the median. So the median is simply the middle value of the data, and putting the median on the chart is going to help us interpret it based on these very simple rules that I just showed you one of. And we use the median to help assess if we're improving. So here's what these rules look like. The first one is 6 data points above or below the median. Now in this case, down is in the direction of goodness. And we see that these 6 points below the median tell me the changes that I made were having an effect. The second rule is anytime I see 5 data points steadily ascending without changing direction or steadily descending, that tells me that my changes were working. So when I look back at Lauries' data, I see here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 data points in a row steadily ascending. And that's more than 5. So I know with a high degree of belief, I can say that the changes she's making brought about improvement, because the chances of seeing this many data points steadily ascending without being related to the changes that she's making is pretty remote. So she's made these changes. I see more than 5 data points steadily ascending. And when the data points are exactly the same, you just count them as 1. So here's the first one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These two count as 6, 7, 8, 9. So she has 9 data points in a row steadily ascending. There's no doubt in my mind that she has improvement. And not only that, but she also has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 6 data points above the median. So she actually hit both of these. But she just needs to have 1. The third rule is that data should cross the median a certain number of times if it's unless it's being affected by the changes you're making. And in this case, Laurie made her changes, and her data only crossed the median 1 time. And that tells me that the changes that she's making really worked. And there's some very smart people who figured out how many times data should cross a median in order for us to ascertain if the changes we're making bring about improvement. And I refer you to the Healthcare Data Guide by Lloyd Provost and Sandy Murray, my colleagues. And on page, in their 2011 edition, you will find these rules annotated and the references for how many times data should cross the median to show improvement. And then every once in a while there's an astronomical point. And an astronomical point means that that point is so far out of line that anybody that understands the process would say something strange happened, and we want to find out what. Because if this is an improvement, we want to see, can we replicate it? So if all of a sudden Laurie had all her participants were expressing enhanced well-being, she would like to know what happened that caused that so that she could design it into her work. So these are 4 simple rules that you can use to help understand if the changes you're making bring about improvement. And you really don't even have to have a calculator. You can draw the median and eyeball it. And there is a tool that you can use from the Institute for Healthcare Improvement. It's called a Run Chart Template. And if you go to ihi.org or you email Miriam, you can get this tool. You can download the tool, and it will make run charts for you and put the median on the chart. So it'll enable you to begin to interpret your data. And by the way, I really recommend that all of you begin to put the data you're collecting for your projects on run charts, and I'm sure that this won't be the last time that you hear about it. So we'll be reinforcing it and helping you do that in the future. So now I want to move and spend the last half an hour we have together talking about changes. What are the changes that you can make to bring about improvement? And the way we like to describe these are in driver diagrams. And a driver diagram is just the best theory we have right now to get results. And in a minute, Laurie's going to show us her driver diagram. But driver diagrams are really handy because it's on one page, most of the changes that I need to make. The changes are actionable, so I'm going to be able to test them. And everything on a driver diagram is necessary and sufficient. So there's nothing on there nice to do. It's like, if I do these things, I will get the results. Everything I need is right here, nothing more and nothing less. And so, what are the ingredients of a driver diagram? An aim statement, and the primary drivers. There's usually 3 to 5 of those, and then change ideas that move those primary drivers forward. So let's take a look at what Laurie's got for us. So Laurie, your aim statement was to foster connections between participants and community members and community groups.
Yes.
So what are your primary drivers? What's it going to take to pull that off?
Our primary driver was, one of them was in staff training, and they needed to really understand what the aim statement was to begin with, and then also just on how do they go about achieving that. And so that was one of our primary drivers.
And then it looks like, let's go through all your primary drivers and then let's come back and look at the change ideas associated with each one. What other primary drivers are going to move you towards your aim?
Looking at the identification of social connectors. So where is it that people could make these types of connections?
Mm-hmm.
And then a partnership. Once we've identified where potential connections could happen, then we needed to have people to partner with us, and we needed to communicate with them what our goals and objectives were and bring them along on board, and also incorporate their ideas
Mm-hmm.
into how we could have a better outcome for the individuals that we serve.
Great. And what else?
And then the last one is fostering the community relationships, so that they could be a part of the project as well.
So if I understand the way driver diagrams work, if I make these changes, if I work on making sure my staff is trained, if we can identify all the varieties of social connections that are available for your participants, if we can partner and improve our communication, and if we have great community relationships, we'll pull it off.
You will. We did.
Is there anything that's missing
that
we should add?
I think you just have to be disciplined about it and make sure that that is the expectation.
And then what about, is there anything on here of these 4 drivers that you really don't need? Like you could accomplish a result without one of those?
Not for the project that we did. I don't think that would be possible. I think
Okay.
every single one of them was necessary.
So thanks. So that's the acid test of a driver diagram. Are all of these things? Can you pop up the slide? Thanks. All of these things necessary and sufficient right here. The primary drivers. Now, each primary driver's got some change ideas associated with it, and these change ideas are going to get run through PDSA cycles. So one change idea around staff training is using evidence-based training. And Dr. Amato's been doing that. And
Yes.
I'm sure that Dr. Amato has made some adjustments to the training based on what she's been learning as she's been training your staff. So her training has probably been put through PDSA cycles, whether we know it or not. Like you said, there are a lot of natural PDSA cycles that were happening even before we put a name to it, because this is kind of a natural way we like to think, that we try something, we learn what happened, we tweak it, and then we do it again. So it looks like, too, that you're going to have initial training, follow-up, and not only just that, but that you've thought about new employees that come into your agency and that they're going to need some kind of training.
Yes.
Anything you want to say about that?
For our initial training with Dr. Amato, at the very first training session before we even had anything with the why, we one of the exercises that she had us do, we recognized right away that if we had a group of people with disabilities in the class, that it would probably be too intimidating for community members to say, oh, I'm going to join this class, and that they would look into the mirror and through the windows in the doorway and say, oh, well, this is a class for people with disabilities. And so we immediately said, okay, well, we need to change this so that people feel more comfortable. And that Dr. Amato did an exercise with us to help us come to that realization. So Dr. Amato and I went back and talked with Ann Schulte from the Y, and we sort of revamped it then immediately. We do follow-up training every other month with our employees to assess how they're doing, what have been the milestones of the project, and then we also incorporate the facilitation, how to make connections, and the expectation to make connections as part of our new employee training.
Great. So under the primary driver identification of social connectors, you have that participants choose connections they prefer, and that staff support the facilitation of connections and working with unique organizations like the Y, and I'm sure there are others. Then under partnership and communication, it looks like your change ideas are this regular communication with staff and community members, and then how to communicate to draw in community members, fostering this willingness and desire among the community members to participate, and comfort being with adults with disabilities, and developing ways to focus on the strengths of the participants. And then for community relationships, it looks like just increasing the diversity of connections. Anything else that you'd like to share with us about your driver diagram?
One of the rich resources that we found in terms of building relationships have been with former staff that people had a natural connection with. We've had a handful of individuals say that they wanted to make connections with former staff, or we've suggested that they've made connections, and so that's been nice to see people reconnect that way. And then we've also had people, as you mentioned, through other community organizations, not just the Y, make connections with individuals. And it was been interesting because at our last follow-up session, we were discussing, okay, well, how do you make that connection with the community member? You know, okay, I should ask them for their phone number or their email. And I said, well, you know what? The second time that you meet someone, you're not very likely to exchange phone numbers and emails. Try to build it around that class. Oh, would you like to get together, you know, before the class, after the class, and make it a little bit more natural?
Great. That's really great. That's a great example of using PDSA, because you could say, you have a question, will this make a difference? And then you can run it and see, did it make a difference? Were we able to meet before class or after class? So that's a lovely example. Thank you. So that really takes us to testing. And so in the model for improvement, we start off with our aim statement. What are we trying to accomplish? Our second question is, how will we know a change is an improvement? And we look at data, and you've learned the very simple rules to look at your data over time to see if the changes you're making are bringing about improvement. And we talked about the value of annotating the run chart so that you know what the changes are that are actually resulting in improvement. And the third question is, what are the changes we need to make to bring about improvement? And we put those changes that are on the driver diagram right into the plan, do, study, act cycle. So in plan, we always have to start with a question and a prediction. If we have participants and folks that are interested in connect before a class or after a class, will that improve the number of natural connections because you're already in geographic proximity? So we have a question, we make a prediction. Yeah, we think it will for about half of the people. Try it, study the results, what happened, and then compare that to our prediction. We thought it would work with about half the participants, but it turned out it worked with 75%. We think it's a good idea. What do we want to do next? So then we might think about the 25% it didn't work with and start working some PDSA cycles around how we could enhance that. And so these cycles just keep rolling until you actually have learned everything that you need to learn and you're ready to implement that change and really make it part of the way you do your work. So we have an example here of a PDSA cycle from Legacy. And what was your plan here? Let's go through the plan part. What were you thinking about here?
Well, at the end of the first class and actually some subsequent classes, we asked the participants about the type of music that they like, and then learned also it wasn't just the type of music but the type of dance, and we needed to make an adjustment there, because even though the individuals that we support love to dance, the choreography of following a dance was a little bit more complicated. So we mixed it up a little bit in terms, and we made it more of a fitness for all. There's some dance, there's some stretching, some yoga, those kinds of things.
Great. So you started off with a question, which was you'd had your first class and you said, well, let's find out what kind of music people like, and let's see if we add a variety of movement, will that make a difference?
Yes.
So she has a question, and I'm sure you had a prediction. You thought that this would make a difference?
We did. We thought that it would make it two things, that people who wouldn't feel self-conscious about participating, and then we also thought that if the Y members saw that there was a little bit more of a variety in the class, that we might be able to get some participation from them as well.
Oh, great. So let's see what happened. So when we go forward and we look at the do phase, now the do phase only gets recorded after you've done it. So Laurie wrote that 6 participants and 3 staff attended the second class, and they played 4 styles of songs from the lists that the participants generated, and then they used a combo of dance steps, free motion, and step class movement. So now we know what happened, but we want to study it compared to our prediction. And you had a prediction that more people would come and that the participants would like it. And what did you find out compared to your prediction?
We found out that we have a steady group that comes, and then we also found out that we were competing with Beautiful Fall Saturdays, and so we didn't have the same number of participants that we thought that we were going to have. And so we were competing with the weather. It was an unusually nice fall, and now that it's gotten a little bit colder, we've had record number of people participating.
Oh, great. So it's seasonal. So that means that maybe you need some PDSA cycles for the fall.
Yes.
About connections outside.
Yes.
Okay. So after the study, you decide what you're going to do next. And in this case, adapt the class by asking at the end of each class for music requests for the next class, and then continuing the combo movement format. And then I think this would spin off into a whole nother set of PDSA cycles around the fall or better weather,
Yes.
what you would do with alternatives. So I was thinking it would be fun for us to build a PDSA cycle together. And by the way, the measurement for this PDSA cycle was, do the participants, did they really enjoy it, and would they come back? And so when asked, they said yes, they enjoyed it, and yes, they would come back. So this is not a measure for her project. This is just a measure for this PDSA cycle. So it's important to have a numeric prediction when I'm planning the cycle, collect numeric data as I do my cycle, and then use that to understand whether the change idea was a good idea. But this is not necessarily going to be a project measure. This is what I would call a mini measure or a PDSA measure. I'm just collecting enough data to find out if the change is a good idea. So we're going to walk over here, and we're going to build a PDSA cycle together. And I'm going to need your help doing this, Laurie.
Okay.
So I'm wondering, do I need to turn this on? Nope, you got it. Okay. So when you do a PDSA cycle, the first thing you have to do is write down the date. So today is the 2nd? Yes. Okay. This way we can kind of keep track. And we have an objective for this cycle, and the objective for this cycle, I think, is about learning about activities, what participants prefer. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So we want to learn. Yes. What participants, prefer for activities. So I'm just writing down, and this, I could also relate which part of the driver diagram this relates to, which was, let's see, let me look at my driver diagram real quick, and let's see what this relates to. This relates to the identification of social connectors. So this would be social connections. I might just make a note. Now, is this cycle, are we going to develop a test, or are we actually going to try something different?
I think we'll develop.
Develop. Okay. Do we have some questions that we want answered in this PDSA cycle?
We do.
What are they?
We want to know the who, the what, the when, and the where.
What?
So,
Uh-huh.
who will be participating?
And, okay, what else?
And what we hope to accomplish in terms of making that connection.
Okay. So we want to know, can we actually do it? So tell me a little bit first before we go on about what we're actually going to try.
Okay. What we had want to try is increasing the connections that Grace has, either through a community or reconnecting her with someone that she had a positive relationship with in her past.
Okay, so our question is, can we increase Grace's connections?
Mm-hmm.
How? It would be good to have a Sharpie, wouldn't it? And I'm sorry that y'all can't really see this, but I thought it would be fun for us to actually try doing it. And you can see that it's messy, but we need some questions. Can we increase Grace's connections? And will Grace be able to? Let's try this one. To identify some activities or people. All right, so now let's go to our plan. So, who is going to talk to Grace?
That would be Matt.
And when is Matt going to do this?
He would do it at the next time that he works. So
When is that?
That would be on Thursday.
On Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's going to see Grace on Thursday?
Yes.
And what is he going to do?
We would use the training that Dr. Amato gave us, but he would sit down with Grace and they would talk about things that she's interested in and people that she's had past connections with that she might like to try to reconnect with.
So he's going to talk to her about her interests and people she might like to see.
Yes.
Okay. And he's going to do this Thursday. Where?
At her house.
Okay, at Grace's house.
Mm-hmm.
And what time does he usually go there?
Usually about 3 o'clock.
And does he need, you said Dr. Amato gave you some training on this. Does he need to go in with a little script, do you think?
He sort of has the training, so he has a script available. And the other sort of prompt that he could use is that Grace has an address book. And so they can use the address book to see if there's people in there that she would like to make a connection with.
Oh, that's a great idea. So you're going to we'll look at Grace's address book. Good. Okay. So now, how will we know if this test of change is successful? What's going to be the data that you would, if you were asking Matt, how did it go, Matt? What would you want him to tell you?
I'd want him to tell me that they had reached out to someone in Grace's past, or that they found a community organization that she would like to give a try.
So they're actually going to reach out as part of this test. They're actually going to call somebody?
Grace is a letter writer, so she would probably prefer to send them a letter, but either a letter or phone call would be great.
So the number of people that Grace writes would be part of the data. What about the number of activities that she could identify that she's interested in? Would that be good data to know?
Yes.
Okay. And number of Grace's activity interests. Now, if Matt were here, I would ask him, but he's not here, so I'm going to ask you. What do you predict will happen as a result of this test of change?
I think that Grace will identify one person that she would like to reconnect with.
Uh-huh. Do you think she'll write a letter that day?
I think she will write a letter, and then I think there will be a period of time where she's waiting for a response, where she might be a little bit anxious.
Okay.
But I think that the person will respond to her, and that then they will connect in person.
Okay, so you're really going to predict that they will connect. All right, so that sounds like another piece of data would be if there's a connection, yes or no. So we're going to go add that, yes or no. And then, you know what? We're not developing a test. This is actually going to be a real test of change because Matt's actually going to try something different.
Okay.
So developing a test is like planning, like if we were writing the script up that Matt would say, but actually we're going to try something. So this is actually an honest to God test of change. Now, we're done. We don't write anything else until after this happens. And after this happens, we would come back and we would say, Grace ID'd 4 people. Oh. Well, we thought she would ID 1, and instead she ID'd 4. So this is helpful, and we learned that she has more folks than we thought. And so then what would be our act would be maybe to have her write letters to 3 more people. So, but when we're writing our PDSA cycle, we stop right here until we actually run it. So next Thursday, after Matt sees her, you would come back and write down what happened. And then you keep this in chronological order, reverse chronological order in a notebook, and this becomes your documentation of your project in a way that you can later, when you get a call from your colleagues in Washington State and they want to know what did you do to get these great results, you have this beautiful story in your storybook of all the PDSA cycles that you did, and you can share it with the world. So it's a way that you can spread your good work if you're rigorous about your documentation. Do you have any questions about how to do a PDSA cycle?
No, I think you went over it very well. Thank you.
You're welcome. The main thing about PDSA cycles is rigor, 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 and doing them, and making those predictions and having a question before you start. So remember, you have to have a question and you have to have a prediction in order to have a PDSA cycle. And you have to be testing something new. It's not a to-do, it's not a task, like have a meeting. You have to have a question. If I have a meeting, will something happen, or can I have a meeting in 10 minutes instead of an hour? So, I just want to talk about the difference between project measures and PDSA measures for a second, because sometimes people get confused or they ask me about this. So project measures, usually your whole project is going to have 2 or 3 outcome measures, no more. And that really reflects your aim, what you're trying to accomplish. You will have more process measures because it takes more processes to bring about change. And then 1 or 2 balancing measures to make sure you're not robbing Peter to pay Paul. Now, your PDSA measures are really about your earliest tests of change, and you're trying to learn, does this idea have merit? Is it good to go ask Grace or other service participants that you have who they know and would like to contact? Does it help using their address book? Is writing or phoning a good method? So you're trying to figure out if the changes are good and how much merit does the change idea have. And then you run successive tests of change. Does this idea have wider applicability? Well, it works for Grace. How does it work for Jose? How does it work for someone who is pre-literate, who can't write a letter? So you begin to learn about, through successive tests of change, you begin to make your idea more and more robust. Where does it not work? And then, when do I implement it? And after implementation, is it still a good idea? Does it still have some proof? So we have primary drivers, for example, around identification of social connectors. That's what we just did our test of change around. And also around connecting at the why. But then our mini PDSA measures might be increased number of attendees, or the number of attendees per week. Is the class enjoyable? That could be a mini PDSA cycle. And what makes it more enjoyable? We might ask people that. So that would be a piece of qualitative data. So when you do PDSA cycles, and let me just pause here and ask if there are any questions in the chat. No. Y'all ask some questions out there. We're dying to answer a question. Somebody text me a question. I'm very patient. Just text me a question. Text me a question. Laurie is also dying to answer any questions.
Oh, she is, yes.
Okay, while you're thinking of your questions, I'm going to go ahead, but do feel free. We've got 6 minutes left, so we have time for questions. And if you'll give me my slides back, I will talk about this idea that it takes multiple PDSA cycles to implement one of your primary drivers. So if our primary driver is to make more community connections, we're going to start with a hunch, a theory, or an idea of how to do that. So we might have an idea that we want to have a dance class at the Y. And we're not just going to be able to pull this off with one dance class, and that's all we have to do, and so we've solved all problems with community connections. No, our first PDSA cycle is going to be to find out what people are interested in. Where is it that they want to go? Then we have to partner with the YMCA and train our staff and their staff. So all of these require maybe 1 or 2 PDSA cycles to make happen. And then we test this idea of a class, and maybe we have 3 service participants there. Just try it on a small scale to see how it works. And then we learn, oh, we need to test different types of dance and different types of movement and music. So that's another cycle. And then we say, oh, we need to assess staff training needs. What else do they need to know? And then finally we're going to work on inviting more people to class. So our theory is that we can actually make community connections through a class at the Y, but it's going to take us several PDSA cycles to achieve that. And so this just shows the series of PDSA cycles that it takes to accomplish an idea. Oh, we're not done. We have 11 cycles to get there. So now Dr. Amato is going to train and retrain the legacy staff. We're going to grow our relationship with the Y. We're going to test advertising the classes to the YMCA members and the YMCA community. Then we're going to connect participants with other opportunities at the Y and see if that builds even more connections. And then we're going to spread the training at the Y so that more Y staff are trained and comfortable, and maybe even later, after we've had a lot of success with this, spread to other Ys in the Twin Cities. So it takes many PDSA cycles to accomplish your aim. It's never just one cycle. So remember, every PDSA cycle needs a question. Every PDSA cycle needs a prediction. In fact, if you don't have a question and you don't have a prediction, you don't have a PDSA cycle. Some cycles are preparing you for a change, but most cycles are testing an idea or a change. And you have successive cycles that help you learn your way to results. And at the end of each PDSA cycle, you say, do I love this idea and I want to adopt it? Do I hate this idea and we want to abandon it? It might have worked in New Jersey, but it doesn't work in Minnesota. Or, and this is what happens most of the time, we adapt it. We figure out how to make it work better based on our context, and we try it again. So we test early, we test often. There's an expression, fail forward. We learn a lot from our failed tests of change, sometimes more than from our successful ones. And we continue testing until we have a high degree of belief that this change works all the time, and then we're ready to go to implementation. I mentioned this before, but I think it's worth re-mentioning. You must document your PDSA cycles. That's why we call it improvement science, because there's a rigor behind it, and that rigor is in the documentation of those darn PDSA cycles. When you're doing a PDSA cycle, scale down. So if you think you want to try something for a week, try it for a day. If you think you want to try it for a day, try it for the next service participant. The main thing is to start small, build your confidence, and to do more tests. The more you test and the smaller you test, the faster you learn. So you can also think of a test of one, N of one day, one person, one visit, one staff member. You have to test under a wide range of circumstances so you know that your ideas work all the time, not just with certain folks or certain situations. And then the whole idea is we want to foolproof the ideas before you implement them. Because once you make a permanent change, it's kind of hard to undo that change. And then test changes from your driver diagram. And if you test in parallel, so you might have one group working on accelerating community connections, have another group working on another driver, which would be, see your driver diagram a second. Oh, here we go. Partnering and improving communication. So if you run tests in parallel, you can accelerate and move twice as fast. And since y'all have just until June to achieve your results, I would suggest testing in parallel. So your takeaways for these two workshops: set an aim, a purpose that's in the future, collect data to see if you're achieving it, and take the changes that you have hunches about or work based on evidence, and test them for your local context and your local environment. What are we trying to accomplish? How will we know a change is an improvement? And what are the changes we need to make to bring about improvement? And can we give Laurie a hand for coming in and sharing with us? We are 16 seconds over.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for coming in, and if you have questions, it looks like we're ran out of time, but do feel free to email those in, and we'll answer them directly. And thank you again for attending, and look out for our information about our next webinar that will be in February. You can visit our HCBS PIPP webpage. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.